Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. It's Conservative Cat. And with me in studio, I don't want to waste any time, Marcus Schrader. He is an explosive individual. I mean, that's just the way I can put this because he went viral for just really talking about Jesus and being arrested for doing that in Watertown, Wisconsin. So it was incredible. He had a small little amplification device and he was just reading a Bible verse. And right across the street, probably, quite a few yards away, actually, not like right across the street, they were probably some distance away, were some drag queens shaking it for children, as we all have seen before here in our own town of Bloomington Normal. So we know what that is. They're in thongs, G-strings, whatever it is, and then they're gyrating in front of young children, which is just inappropriate. And Marcus Schrader said, you know what, I'm going to spread the word, and I'm going to do that from a distance. And then the police officer came over and arrested him, grabbed his arm, threw it behind his back. They said he was resisting arrest, but they didn't really tell him what he was arrested for. Marcus, thanks so much for coming on. Can you tell me a little bit about that here and how that all kind of has worked out, played out since that happened? What have you been charged with? What's the courts? What's the update?
Yeah, update. Probably not a ton since last time I was on the show with you. We're just trying to pick a specific lawyer to go with. I've had probably 8 or 9 law firms reach out wanting to do it pro bono, so that's been a great blessing. And so we're just kind of picking probably between 2 law firms, or maybe seeing if we could work with both of them. Just kind of looking at what that could look like. My court date for pleading guilty or not guilty on the charges is this Wednesday, so August 16th. And I was charged with amplification without a permit and resisting arrest. So I'm not sure if I mentioned this last time, but what we found out as I did a little bit more research and was talking to some different people in regards to the amplification without a permit, like if you look at my actual citation, on the citation, what I'm charged with is music with amplification without permit. And so it's a music code. So like if I want to host like a rock concert or something like that at the park, I need a permit for using that amplification. And the reason why is because, so the Supreme Court has actually ruled that these amplification laws can't be enforced upon 2 protected classes of speech, political speech and religious speech, which mine would classify as both. And so, definitely not looking like a very good case for the officers or the city there in regards to just what the law says. Obviously, they do have the right to restrict some speech, like some amplified noise, even in regards to political and religious speech. But the only situations where they can restrict that is if it's in an unreasonable time, place, or manner. So like if it's 1 o'clock in the morning outside somebody's house, turned all the way up, but in the middle of a park on a public sidewalk at 3 o'clock in the afternoon with 200 protesters gathering at this fence. By the way, the drag queens, there was a field in between me and the drag queens. They're probably 100 yards away. So they were a ways away. In that situation, there is absolutely no basis they had legally they had no basis legally to even stop me from preaching, let alone give me any citation, and let alone arrest me. So not only should they not have arrested me, they couldn't give me a citation. They couldn't even stop me from using the speaker when you look at the actual laws. But yeah, apparently that's why I was arrested on the spot was just amplification, which usually, as far as I've heard, is not something you just on the spot arrest someone for. And then resisting arrest, which anybody who's seen the video has seen that's bogus as well.
Yeah. Well, and they said that you're being charged with resisting arrest because your arm tensed up, and somehow that was resisting arrest. Which, I mean, when you watch the video, which has just been everywhere on social media, it's incredible that this is happening in the United States of America. This is the kind of stuff, like, I'd expect this from the United Kingdom. I would expect this from some sort of stand somewhere, some sort of Pakistan, Afghanistan, right? Christians being prosecuted and persecuted, really, for religious speech. You were just reading a Bible verse. It wasn't even a Bible verse against homophobia. That's the thing. Wasn't it a Bible verse about love
Yeah,
or?
it was Galatians 5. So just talking about the true love is that which fulfills the law of God. Like the law of God is the definition of love. I don't think it mentions homosexuality anywhere in that whole chapter. And if it did, I hadn't gotten to that.
Mhm.
I was just reading those passages about love.
Wow.
And the
And
reason why is because that word is thrown around a lot in that community, in these sexually progressive movements, the LGBTQ movement. They have the slogans all centered around love. They label us as hateful and bigoted, and they of course are loving. They have the love is love. Don't restrict free love, that kind of thing. But um, when you're talking to people like that, engaging in that cultural sphere, we have to define our terms and define what do we mean when we use that word love,
yeah,
which is why I was reading from that passage.
exactly. So your definition of love comes from the Bible, I'm sure, like many Christians. It's your basic instructions before leaving Earth, right? The Bible, your basic instructions. And if your definition is in the Bible, and that's what love is to you, then there is no reason why somebody should come after you, whether legally or physically or in any emotional or any kind of social way. That's I thought, whatever happened to live your truth? Your truth is the Bible.
Right,
Right?
right.
Whatever happened to live your truth? If I believe love to be true in this way, then that's the way I believe it to be true. And it's not really it's God. The Bible is the word of God.
Mhm.
So, another thing I wanted to hit on before we shift, because really why I wanted Marcus on today was to talk about the Barbie movie, because we've both seen it, and I think it's going to be interesting to get the Christian perspective, but also the male perspective. Marcus, I didn't realize how young you are. So I was talking with Joanne Knittmeyer, who's a good friend of mine here in Bloomington. So you're in your teens, correct?
Yeah, I'm 19. I turned 20 in October.
Wow. Well, happy early birthday. But I'm 24. So
Oh,
you're
really?
much, yeah, you're younger than I am. And I was like, wow, he's 19 years old and he holds himself that well and held yourself that well when the police officers were coming to arrested you. You held yourself so well. Another 19-year-old, I don't know if a 19-year-old's hand is being drugged behind his back. I don't know how much resistance a normal 19-year-old. Like, this was very peculiar
I
how
kind of
well
wanted
you
to
conducted
resist. I
yourself.
wanted to resist. They charged me with resisting, even though I didn't. And so I
Yeah.
thought that was kind of ironic, like because in my mind I knew. So I like that what I just shared with you about the Supreme Court and like the particulars of those laws and codes. I didn't know those particulars, but I did know I had a constitutional right to be there. I just didn't know where. I knew I had the right to be there. Um,
Mhm.
and so I have this in the back of my mind. The officer, which is why I didn't give him the mic right away. Which I've received mixed counsel. Some older guys have been like, "Hey, you should have just given him the mic when he wanted it." Others have been like, "No, you should have held on to it." Um, I don't regret not giving him the mic because he had no right to stop me from uh, from preaching on the speaker. And so, us not standing for our rights is how they get taken away. And so I was like,
Mhm.
I knew that he had no right to, even if there was some sort of code that could have got to me, which hindsight we found out, that doesn't apply to me. But even if the officer doesn't have any right to, when there's other amplification in the park without permits too, to select the one that he doesn't like, come up and just start manhandling him and grabbing, seizing my property from me without any conversation, without even any ticket or
Hey,
citation.
we're taking your property away from
Right.
you. Yeah, exactly. And, I I want to point this out. If it was, your property as far as, your dog, like your dog is your property. What if an officer just came and snatched your dog? Like, he
Mm-hmm.
doesn't have the right to do that unless he tells you why.
Right.
Right? Like, that's That's where I think, or anything else in your home. Like, what if an officer just gets inside of your car and starts driving away with it? Like, you're just not supposed to do anything?
Yeah,
No, you're supposed to protect your property,
right,
even if it is against a police officer. That they're not above the law. Okay, they
right.
are to enforce the law. But also, I wanted to talk about the law in Wisconsin and how it pertains to drag queens gyrating in front of children. You were telling me a little bit about a sexual harassment or a sexual materials and sexual performance in front of minors. That's illegal, right, in the state of
Yeah,
Wisconsin?
the specific statute is 948.055, and essentially says that anyone, I don't remember the exact language, but essentially the meat of it is anyone who performs like sexually suggestive, has any sexually suggestive content in front of anyone who has not obtained 18 years of age, or that the actor has any reason to believe that they have not obtained 18 years of age, they are guilty of like I think a class F felony. And then if they haven't obtained 13 years of age, it's an even worse penalty. I think that's like I forget the specific classes of felony, but it gets worse and worse like the younger they are.
Younger.
Of course, these drag queens dressed in lingerie doing these sexual performances are doing it in front of 5, 6, 7-year-old kids. So it's like
Toddlers.
literally like the worst possible part of that law to break. Like the one with the severest penalty, that's what they're doing in the public park with probably 70 officers all watching it and doing and having this law brought to their attention. We made sure they knew about this law. The police, the chief of police, every single officer there.
Which isn't even your job. Like, you're not, they're tasked with knowing the law. And it's like, it's illegal because you see it and it doesn't feel right. What's the classic? I think it's obscenity law. You know it when you see it. You're like, this is clearly illegal. Something bad is going on here. These are children handing dollar bills to men dressed in lingerie. Like,
Right.
it's just it's shocking to me that we are having this discussion. I feel like if you're 5 years old and you've got a man dancing in front of you like a stripper, then that's clearly against the law. But yeah, I wanted to talk with you a little bit about that, but let's shift gears. You brought up what you've been going through as far as being a Christian and being arrested for reading a Bible verse. And I just feel like there's also an attack on Christians when it comes to culture and art. There's just nothing really out there for me personally as a Christian anymore. There is some, right? I mean, there's some independent media, there's some independent movies. Sound of Freedom I really enjoyed. I don't know if you've seen Jesus Revolution. Have you seen that movie?
Yes, I've seen it.
Isn't it great? I love that movie. There's not a whole lot, though, out there for Christians anymore. I'm going to play the Barbie trailer for our listeners. So I'm going to add this to our screen here. If you're watching live on YouTube, you can see me and Marcus in studio. Marcus Schrader is joining me. We're going to play the Barbie trailer. And then I want to get your overall reaction to the movie. Marcus, here we go.
Hey, Barbie. Can I come to your house tonight?
Sure. I don't have anything big planned, just a giant blowout party with all the Barbies and planned choreography and a bespoke song. You should stop by.
So cool.
You can find me under the lights, diamonds under my eyes.
This is the best day ever.
It is the best day ever. So is yesterday, and so is tomorrow, and every day from now until forever. Do you guys ever think about dying?
When my heart breaks,
Some things have been happening that might be related.
when my world shakes.
Cold shower, falling off my roof, and my heels are on the ground. What do I have to do?
You have to go to the real world. You can go back to your regular life, or you can know the truth about the universe. The choice is now yours.
The first one, the high heel.
You have to want to know, okay? Do it again.
Closer I am to find. Closer I am to find.
I'm coming with you.
Okay.
Wow, this is the real world. What's going on? Why are these men looking at me?
Yeah, they're also staring at me.
Alrighty, so Marcus, I am getting rid of that. I mean, I think we get the gist. So I wanted to play the trailer just in case people. I know a lot of my listeners, Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal, have never really seen the Barbie movie, but Marcus, you did. So your thoughts about the trailer? I think that there's a very big difference between the trailer and the movie. But your thoughts about the movie and the trailer?
Yeah, I mean, in the trailer, in some sort of sense, I kind of enjoyed the movie, as in it kind of took everything that we're facing in our culture right now, all of the woke agenda, the agenda about feminism and kind of undermining biblical values and motherhood and all these different things, and it just kind of boiled it all down and put it into a 2-hour movie, which makes some of this easy to respond to. And so I kind of like that it's bringing up these conversations because it's being talked about a lot culturally now. But I think there was so much in that movie that like all these different lines that have these different suggestions. And even in the trailer, like Barbie's asking these questions about, okay, do you guys ever think about death? And that's something that kind of becomes a theme of the movie. It's kind of part of her problem where she has to go on this journey now because she starts thinking about death and Barbie shouldn't be thinking about death. And the Barbie movie kind of introduces a lot of problems, but never gives any of the answers to any of the problems. So it never actually wraps up any solution to her thinking about death, which is like following a basic storyline. A storyline, typically, the actor, or the protagonist, the main actor, has something that happens to them, something that makes their world go wrong, and then they go on a journey to fix that problem and like recover from whatever happened, and then the end of that movie is like the solution to whatever that problem was in the beginning. And so like all these different things that Barbie's facing at the beginning are never actually answered. Like they never actually close the story loop or have that cohesive storyline. But also, I mean, so there was a lot of problems just with like simple storyline writing that like the movie was just kind of a mess. You know, it wasn't very well.
I know. At the end of it, I was just like, what did I just watch? I don't even understand what the point of it really was, or like what like there was no solution to her problem. It was just very bizarro. But you're right. I don't even think her questioning death was a part of the film. Like it was, and it's supposed to be, and you know that it is. But then she meets her creator in the end. Okay, and this is what really bothered me was she meets the creator, and then she asked the creator, well, aren't you going to, write my story? Aren't you going to tell me what to do next? Because she's kind of caught. She wants to go back to the real world to fix it and rid it of men, I guess. I don't know. But the real world is dominated by men, allegedly, and then Barbie Land is dominated by women. And she wants to go back to the real world to kind of make a difference, I guess, is her answer to, having this death problem where she is aware of her mortality. Which, I mean, I guess, right? God wants us to have some sort of purpose in life, and, whatever God's purpose is for you, that is how you deal with your mortality. You live out God's purpose, and then you don't fear death, really, because God's got your back. But the creator of Barbie, the inventor, whom she meets at the very end, says very specifically, it's up to you, Barbie. You write your own story.
And I think one of the lines that Barbie specifically made, I kind of caught that too, but one of the lines Barbie specifically said was, I think the way she worded it was, I don't want to be the one that's made, I want to be the maker, as she's talking about creating her own story. And so that's kind of like the line where it's like this expressive individualism, which also is kind of like Ken's journey too. Ken at the end, what's the answer to all of Ken's problems? I mean, if you look at,
I'm Knuff.
right, yeah, I mean, if you look at the beginning too, so Barbie's problems aren't answered in the end. You look at Ken's problems at the beginning. He's not respected. He has nothing that he actually does in life. His job is quote unquote beach, but he's not a lifeguard. He doesn't do anything. He has no talents. He has nothing that he's actually contributing to society. His life is meaningless. The one person he likes, Barbie, doesn't like him back, and he's just kind of a simp following her around. And so these are all of his problems. And the way that they try to kind of solve that in the end is you're just enough, just the way you are. You know, I'm Knuff. You know, you just be Ken. You're good enough just being Ken. And
yeah, you don't need a woman. You don't need a life partner.
Right.
Like that's where I was like, oh, so it's not only just pitting Barbie against her creator, her maker, right?
Yeah.
So she wants to be the maker, not be the one who was made. So it's pitting her against the creator in some sort of way, although they do seem like they have some sort of relationship, but it's also pitting Ken and Barbie against each other. This narrative that was pushed in the film, I think.
Right.
So it's like,
well, the whole film is putting men and women against each other.
yeah,
That's the entire theme of the film. It's the patriarchy versus the matriarchy.
yeah,
And
yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It just pits men and women against each other. One thing that I wanted to ask you about was you bring up Ken. You remember when he goes to the real world, and this is all dominated by men, folks. Remember, it's dominated by men. And he goes and he tries to find a job, and he's trying to find a job in construction and in the corporate world. And then he goes, well, I'm a man. Why won't you give me a job? I thought that men dominated the real world. And the guy in the corporate high rise is like, well, we do, but it's kind of a secret.
Right.
Like, what does that even mean? So you guys even proved in your own film that it's bogus because a merit-based system actually exists. And what? We're supposed to believe that there's this secret patriarchy? Like, Marcus, you're a guy. Do you guys go to secret meetings to figure out how to rule the world and dominate the real world? Like,
hey, how'd you figure it out? That's why we have men's Bible studies. And we're not, it's like, you know, the Bible, the book on patriarchy.
Yeah, right. I know.
What the Bible is. It's patriarchy 101. Here's how we, no, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
But yeah, they had that message, but I thought that line was actually kind of interesting too, because he was like, you know, we still have the patriarchy, we still rule the world, we just hide it better. And right away, what I think is transgenderism. And obviously, I'm sure that's not what they meant by any means, right? But to a certain extent, there's one pastor that I know who kind of talks about some of these issues, and he says that patriarchy is in some ways inevitable. Like men are the ones who are going to be leading. They're just either going to be leading in a way that honors women and children, protects women and children, or in a way that destroys women and children. And so they're either going to be leading constructively or destructively. And so when we think about these things, like even in like our what is it now, fourth wave feminism, is that right? I think fourth wave.
Yeah, I think that's we're in the fourth wave, or yeah.
Even with like all of the work that the feminists have done and all these things that they've done to try and equalize men and women, which essentially when they say make it equal, they just mean kind of erase all gender differences. And so once they've done that, once we're this far into it, we still actually have men winning the women's sports. You know, they're just doing it under the guise of
being a woman.
Right.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, is that these people are the actual, like, I hate to say it, I call them feminazis, but really that's what it is. And, you know, me being a woman watching the film, you remember the part in the film, there's this woman and she goes, you have to be the boss, but you can't be too mean. You have to be making money, but you have to stay at home. And like she goes through all of these different things, and it's an internal struggle that I do think a lot of women deal with, because they are living in a world that has been feminazied and, like, for lack of a better term, it's feminazied, and women actually go through that problem, but they're trying to say that that's not the reason why women go through that problem. It was never that way until feminism existed. So in a way, it kind of
also they actually kind of show it in the movie too. When Barbie comes back, she's the only Barbie who left. So Barbie comes back, all the other Barbies were still there, but the main Barbie, she comes back. Ken has taken over Barbie land and made it Kendom. And so he's instituted the patriarchy, which is supposed to be bad. But what's funny is all the Barbies are actually happy with it. They're all loving it. And like all of them are talking about how they actually hated leading things. They felt like they weren't made to be the ones making the decisions. Like it was too stressful for them. And it's nice to have the men leading. Like they say that in the movie. And then like that's the climax where like everything's gone wrong.
Yeah, but like that was my favorite part. I don't know about you when Ken does "I'm just Ken" anywhere else on or something. That song, like that was the best part of the film when Ken actually gets to rule Barbie land. And I mean, people were hooting and hollering. People loved it. Yeah. And there's a part of us, I think, biologically that is always rooting for the man. Because you guys have something, it's the male burden of performance, right? I've talked about it before on the show. Conservative Cat City's 92.9. If you're just joining us, Marcus Schrader joins me, and we've been talking about the Barbie movie. He saw it, I saw it, and he's offering all kinds of interesting opinions, perspectives, being a man and being a Christian, an outspoken Christian. But yeah, I think that all of us want to see the guy win in the end. So I felt bad for Ken when he couldn't get the girl. And we watched the trailer earlier, and you look at the trailer, it is not at all what you would expect the movie to be. Like, they selectively picked out clips to make it look like this was a love story between Barbie and Ken. Yeah. Even though it was nowhere near that. They selectively chose clips to make it like about Barbie dolls, where her feet go flat, right? Which is a funny part of the film. And it's not at all political. They selectively chose out the non-political parts of the movie, but the movie is all political. Like it's all about women against men. And the best part was when Ken actually got Kendom, I thought, in the movie, because we were all rooting for him and we thought it was funny. They all had fur coats on. There were so many horses. I thought the film was really done well as far as cinematics. It was a very colorful film. They had a lot of marketing, so it's like gross like $1 billion. I think that's internationally though, so not nearly as much as you would think, but it's making a lot of money. But your thoughts about another scene, being a Christian. There was one scene that really stuck out to me, and it was in the very beginning of the film, where there's these little girls who are sitting around in a circle with their baby dolls. And they talked about how baby dolls were the toy of imitating motherhood, and how that was like anti-feminist, how that was anti-woman. Giving your children baby dolls, I suppose, is bad. And the children, after Barbie comes down from the sky, and it's this huge Barbie doll, the children in the circle start smashing the baby dolls' heads. Your thoughts about that? And how'd you receive that?
I'm not sure if you saw it. What is that? 2 years ago now, when Roe was overturned. Is that 2 years?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 2 years.
Okay. When Roe was overturned, there were protesters outside, I think, the Supreme Court in Washington, D.C. So all these pro-choice protesters are gathering. What they were actually doing was sitting on the pavement with baby dolls smashing their heads.
Oh, wow.
Protesting the overturn of Roe versus Wade. And so, like, right away, I see that. Like, I think Tucker Carlson played it, where he plays the video of them doing this outside the Supreme Court. And so, I saw that right away. I was like, I connected the two. But I mean, really, that's what that was. Like, they were. That's what they were implying without explicitly implying it, because they're saying that these girls are playing as if they're mothers. And really, it's kind of like a reflection. It's like a story. The story is like a reflection for how history has taken place. It is kind of the way that they're portraying this, where for all of history, women have had to be mothers, and then all of a sudden Barbie steps into the scene, and now girls can be anything because Barbie can be anything, which is the tagline that happens right after that. So they see Barbie, they're playing to be mothers, but then Barbie comes into the scene. Barbie can be a doctor. Barbie can be, on the Supreme Court. Barbie can be a president. Barbie can be a construction worker. Barbie can just be stereotypical Barbie. Barbie can be anything. Therefore, girls can now be anything. And that's like that's what opens up the movie. And as soon as they realize, hey, we can trade in these baby dolls for this Barbie doll, it was them trading in their motherhood for this success in the economic and political sphere. And so they're trading in their motherhood for this so-called success. And the way they do that is by smashing the heads of the babies.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw that, and right away I was like, that is undertones of abortion and baby killing. Like they're pro baby killing. And that's like right away, and like it just put a bad taste in my mouth right from the beginning. And that's one thing I don't quite understand about the film is, when we live in the real world, we understand that, women, she visits the real world, Barbie, and she notices there's no construction workers who are women. She visits a construction site in the real world, and then she's like, "What? Where's all the Barbies? Where's all the women in this construction site?" And I would hate to be the one to tell her, "Honey, that no, women don't do that. They just don't. Some do. A minority of women do, but it's not because of some sort of underlying patriarchy or men won't allow it. It's literally because physically women can't keep up. Right? Like that's the only reason why.
Which is probably why when Ken has Kendom, all the Barbies are enjoying it. They're like, finally, the men have stepped up and fulfilled the role, and they're enjoying their role as like the helpmate. And as this is happening, Barbie, in order to save Barbie Land and save the world and like be done with the evil of Kendom or the patriarchy, she has to literally take each of these Barbies aside and
re-educate them.
Re-educate them and convince them that they don't like Kendom, they don't like the patriarchy, and convince them that this is all bad and we need to return back to Barbie Land.
Yeah, as if women are brainwashed.
Like, historically speaking, I think, and I'm not sure what you think about this, but historically speaking, 4% of women even wanted the right to vote. And like a lot of the early feminist movement and what they were doing, it was a very small minority of women that actually wanted a lot of these things that these early feminists were fighting for. And they had to go around, convince the rest of the women, telling them, hey, this is what you want. You're not happy the way you are. And they have to put the man against the woman and kind of make her jealous of his career, make her jealous, and make her dissatisfied with motherhood, which is the beginning of the movie. And they actually bookend it that way. The beginning of the movie, they're smashing the baby's heads. And then the end of the movie, they're disrespecting motherhood as well, because like they've got the pregnant Barbie. What's her name? I think.
Oh yeah, I didn't even connect that. Wow. Oh my gosh, Marcus. Yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
They bookended. They started with smashing the baby's heads, and then they end it with seeing the pregnant Barbie. All the men that see the pregnant Barbie instantly shudder, and they're like shudder in disgust, and they go, I thought we discontinued her. Like I thought we were done with that. We discontinued the pregnant Barbie. And they're like, I guess she still exists. And so there's like one pregnant Barbie. None of the other Barbies, there's nothing about familyhood or family. There's nothing like, so the whole beginning of the conflict with Barbie and Ken, like where you might think this is going to be some sort of love story. And there's this conflict also between just men and women generally. Part of that you would think is maybe there'd be some sort of mutual respect at the end. Maybe Ken's and Barbies are going to do this together now. You would expect some sort of relationship. There's no actual relationship between men and women in the entire film. There's no actual substantive relationship that would actually build any sort of family. There is no family relationship. It's like family is just completely broken down in the movie. And the conclusion of it is, for us all to be happy, the Barbies and the Kens have to live separately. Like, I'm good being Ken. I don't need a wife. I don't need family. I'm good. I'm enough. And Barbie's like, I'm on my way to the real world. Which then, of course, if the Barbies are ruling the world, they're doing the construction work, they're ruling the Supreme Court, they've got the president in this fictional Barbie land, and it is fictional because it just doesn't work in real life. But
no, it doesn't, and it wouldn't work in real life. And like that's where the movie shoots itself in its foot multiple times, where people watching this film realize how crazy this stuff actually is. And I think that I don't know. I'm now people who watch this film probably were like millennials who were super super leftist. That's what this movie was all made for. But yeah, they went and you would think that there would be some sort of, hey, this is a middle ground. You have strengths, I have strengths. Let's find a middle ground. But
Right.
no, they recall it Barbie Land, and it's almost like they want women after this movie to be the makers, or not to be the maid, but to be the makers.
Right.
So that's
Well,
literally
it's
to
all
be
people
the
in general. Like Ken finds his worth in himself. Barbie finds her worth in herself. Everything's about
yeah
we make our own
individual.
purpose in life. We're good the way we are. It's that expressive individualism that has brought us to a lot of the problems we see in our culture. It's what brought us to drag queens. All this that we see, all the problems that we're seeing, the breakdown in the family, and all these problems that even a lot of times leftists will complain about are a result of things like lack of fatherhood in the homes, lack of actual strong masculine leadership, and families that actually stick together, the high divorce rates, adultery, all these problems that we're seeing in culture flows from
The
the
feminist
foundation
movement.
of culture, which is the household. And
Mhm.
so, which of course then with like the way that they have this movie working with putting men and women as essentially both of them can just be equal is essentially the idea that they're trying to communicate is, Barbies can do all these roles and so can Kens, which like the end of the movie, like, yeah, I guess we'll let the Kens have some more power. But even still, it's not equal because the Barbies are the ones deciding how much power the Kens get. And it's like there's this joke like the Kens want to be on the Supreme Court, and she's like, well, maybe a lower district court or something like that. But like, so Kens are so it's supposed to be more equal now than it was before. But even still, it's like the Barbies are still ruling the world. And
Yeah, and it's going to take time for the Kens to be able to
Right.
redeem themselves, I guess, for the patriarchy, or for men to redeem themselves from
Yeah.
controlling the land. Yeah, it's a wild film. You're listening to Cities 92.9, the news and talk of Bloomington Normal. We've got a few minutes left. I do want to talk with you more, Marcus, about the Barbie movie. That's what we've been talking about. We've hit a lot of topics. I think this is interesting. You mentioned the not voting. Only 4% of women actually were for, right? What was that statistic?
Yeah, I think it was 4%. Yeah,
the right to vote.
4% wanted the right to vote.
I agree. Well, and I've said it before on this program, and it's gotten me a lot of heat. I don't think women should be able to vote. I know that sounds crazy. I'm not saying you're saying that, Marcus, but I've said that several times on the program, and people have been like, "How could you say such a thing?"
Yeah.
No. Here's the thing: is that you can never truly be. You can never truly respect the man, the husband that you are with, right? Until you are fully respecting even his decision in what the politics should be. And politics, it's all operated on logic, right? There's policy, there's numbers, there's things that you have to follow in a logical way when it comes to politics. And women are emote differently. It doesn't mean that they're bad. And there was a part in the film where Barbie is sitting on a park bench. And I think that they almost mock this about women, which I found deeply offensive. And I was kind of curious if you found it, but it might be just, my perspective. She's sitting on a park bench and she's crying, and she notices everybody in the park and what they're going through and the different types of feelings they're having. So that's kind of something women have. It's a superpower, right? I like to say that it's like our superpower. Men, you guys are ridiculously strong. Women, it's like we can see everybody's emotion in real time. It's insane. But they almost make fun of it, because I think at one point in the movie, Barbie is all upset about the real world. And she goes, I just can't stop crying, as if she's like some bimbo for emoting. That doesn't mean that you are a bimbo. It doesn't mean that you're wrong. And I would be kind of curious your thoughts, considering the voting and feminism changing that rule. I think we almost demonized that we emote differently and we think emotionally. That's why we didn't have the right to vote. I hate to say it that way. But that's why women didn't vote, is because they looked to the logic side of the equation for the voting, right?
Right.
That makes sense. Politics is done via logic. And we've seen a massive shift because now women just vote. If you look at the numbers, women turn out to vote every single time, especially here in the state of Illinois. It's ridiculous. People, unmarried women, an unprecedented amount of unmarried women going out to vote. And it's all based off of emotion. So, your thoughts about the emotion in the film that Barbie was going through when she entered the real world? And do you think they demonized it, or do you think that they showed it in a positive way? I don't know.
Yeah, I don't necessarily. I guess when I was watching it, I didn't pick up on that as much.
Mhm.
I think they showed Ken very emotional earlier in the film too. There's something I noticed right away is like Ken. Some of the Kens are like fighting emotionally and just emotionally bickering, and like the Barbies have to come as the logical ones who are like, hey, let's break it up and like having some meeting, And so I kind
In
of
Barbie Land. In
Yeah.
Barbie Land.
in Barbie Land, and then she comes into the real world, and now she's crying. And I guess I didn't necessarily take it as them portraying it as disrespectful to women's emotions. I didn't take it as them putting it as positively either. I think they were just. When you look at this movie, essentially what they're trying to do is erase all things that make the genders different.
Mm.
A Barbie, like the girl can be anything because Barbie can be anything, and so she can fill any spot that a man can fill. And the problem with the real world is that, like the problem that Barbie realizes, Barbie thinks that she's fixed the real world by like introducing the matriarchy, and then she gets to the real world and she realizes that there are a lot of problems in the real world, and they're all connected to the fact that there's a patriarchy still. And so once you start to erase those gender things, it's like it comes back to the question, that Matt Walsh always asks is like, well, what is a woman? And what is a man then? Like what is the thing that actually makes us different? And at that point, then it's just our biology. Like if you're going to say that there's nothing that makes us different in our roles in society, that we're not, like women can be just as good at all the same things that men can be good at, and vice versa. And there's nothing that and you erase everything that makes us different emotionally, logically, these different aspects, then literally the only thing that comes down to what makes Barbie different than Ken is at the end of the movie, she has to go to the doctor to get a vagina, because that's like the only thing that makes her different than Ken. So like as they're separating, it's like Barbie has to like embrace like this physical, like her physical reality as she becomes a human, which by the way, from the other side, that is just completely transphobic. So they probably kind of botched that one there if they were going for.
Yeah. No, I know. And I didn't understand the Allen doll. From what I understood, people were saying that was a transgender Barbie, but I think that he was just gay Barbie, or gay Ken.
He just seems like gay. Yeah.
Yeah, I didn't understand exactly his whole world.
There was a transgender, like the rumor of the transgender Barbie, which I was like expecting to be in the film, but then it wasn't. So there was an actor who was a man playing a Barbie, who was like a transgender woman playing a Barbie, but they don't tell you which one of them. I don't even remember. I think it's the doctor, but like they're getting pretty good at their costume nowadays. They're trying to wear womanhood as if it's a costume that they can put on, and so they're getting better at this costume. So it's harder to tell a lot of times, and so yeah, I forget which one. I think it was the doctor. But so there was an.
Interesting.
So that's the thing about the transgender Barbie.
There was a trans actor.
Yeah,
okay, because there was a rumor, and I was like, "Is it this Alan character?" So Alan is kind of like a neutral Ken, I guess, and like Alan's role in it is really weird. So I think that Alan was some sort of like non-binary character that they threw in there or something. I don't know. It was completely wild. We are almost out of time, Marcus. Real quick, I want to inform our listeners. So Marcus Schrader, he is going through a battle in the courts right now because he was it was unacceptable, this arrest, and illegal. I'll just go as far as to say that, according to all of these ordinances about amplification devices and how that only applies to music via the U.S. Supreme Court. And these cops arrested him. He was 100 yards away from these drag queens who were gyrating in front of young children in lingerie. And then the cops come up, take his arm, throw it behind his back, rip the microphone from his hand, and say he was resisting arrest, which, according to the video, it's not true. Marcus, how do we help you? Is there anything that we can do? And do you have like a YouTube channel or a podcast we can go check out?
Yeah, we've got a YouTube channel. If you go to Warriors for Christ Studios, that's our YouTube channel. We'll probably be posting updates on my case, things like that. We also started a podcast a week ago. I think our second episode drops today. And so we've got that on YouTube, the Warriors for Christ podcast. That's on our channel, Warriors for Christ Studios. And then it's also on Apple Podcasts. And I think we're working on getting on Spotify and the other platforms. But I think for now, it's just on YouTube and Apple Podcasts. But yeah, in regards to like ways that people can actually help, first of all, is just getting the word out there is good. Go subscribe to the channel. But also, like, if you want like someone to contact, the police department has been receiving hundreds of calls. What I would really like to see, which is good, the police department should be rebuked for what they did. But what I want to see out of this case isn't that, I am just personally vindicated from an unlawful arrest, but that this drag queen story hour, by the way, is a yearly event. It's an annual event. This was their second annual time doing a drag queen dance hour for the kids in Watertown at the same park. They're planning to do it next year. What would be the best outcome out of this case isn't just that I'm personally vindicated or that we've got free speech rights, but that we don't even have to be there to speak out because the drag queen event isn't happening in the first place. We want to have the mayor, the chief of police actually enforce the law. Call them. I don't know their numbers right now, but if you look up the mayor of Watertown, the chief of police, let them know that we do not want this event to take place in Watertown again. And the amount of support I've seen from Watertown residents, I truly believe that if the mayor and the chief of police and the city council don't actually take a stand against this and they allow it to happen in another year, that their political career is not going to last them very long. This will be their last term in office. We will do our best to make sure of that. If they are so incapable as a civil magistrate to even protect the innocent minds of 5, 6, 7-year-old kids, like that's one of the lowest hanging fruit on this whole tree. Like at the very least, we should be protecting the children. And if they can't do that, they have no business being in any position in office.
Exactly. And thanks so much, Marcus Schrader, for joining me here on Conservative Cat. It's a blessing always to talk with you. You have a great rest of your day.
You too.